What's up, everyone? Online prep coach Alex Kicker here with theprepcoach.com. Today we're going to be breaking down Epitalon, or if you're from the north, Epitalon. Not sure how everyone says it, but either we're looking at Epitalon, and this kind of goes to one of the few molecules that I think should and could be utilized every single day for in terms of driving longevity, driving performance, driving quality of life, driving pretty much everything. If we look at those three compounds, I think they would probably be more in the technically the bioregulator small molecule world. There's differences in terminology, but at the end of the day, we're talking about these small bits of amino acids that can drive a lot of epigenetic function. So Epitalon is really cool. Let's kind of break in first. Let's look at the pineal gland. I think that's probably the most important thing to talk about first when you're talking about Epitalon. So first we have our pineal gland. Now, this handles a lot, both biologically and also from a spirituality-based aspect, if you want to kind of call it that. So from like a basic biological aspect, we are seeing the pineal gland handling everything from obviously light and really photonic exchange, which handles overall circadian patterns, which handles all of our systems that go throughout the entire day. So all the actual ligands and the whole binding process that occurs. You look at what the pineal gland does to the biological system as a whole. If it influences so much from a circadian photonic-based aspect, that means everything from insulin sensitivity, nutrient partitioning, how you fold memories, how you fold different proteins to different organs. It's all kind of dependent upon this cascade. It's all coming from pineal gland stimulation. That's like the hard science biological facts. Now, the cool part is in the brain, right up here in cerebral tissue, we see it as being kind of like the extension. And this is the part you kind of got a little bit hippie here, right? So I got the biological side here. If we look more at the spiritual side of things, this is essentially what we believe is the connection to our conscious state. So it's that protrusion, it's that antenna, it's that connecting rod that essentially drives that conscious connection with whatever your religious belief is energetically through the pineal gland, to the central nervous system, and then to the cardiac nervous system. And then that actually goes down to your foot, that fascial mitochondrial layer, the opposite, big toe goes to the opposite glute. And you have this whole firing from earth, feet, all the way up through the opposite glute, big toe, and then up the cerebral tissue after you pass the heart, into the pineal gland, and then into the conscious world. So very much spiritual, kind of hippie, but really cool. Because if we kind of think about that as being the, let's say, the connector or the antenna, right? We see that as being the connection to the energies of the universe, basically. What's cool about it is that dimethyltryptamine, DMT, right, can actually be released by the pineal gland in near-death situations. So people that have had a near-death experience, the pineal gland will release this basically a psychochemical compound in order to give you these different kinds of, I don't want to say lucid states, but almost like visions, if you want to call it that. Now, again, that does sound very trippy, but if you look at the pineal gland, there's a clear energetic connection, if we want to call the spirituality side of things that, and there's a clear biological connection from the circadian, from the ligand binding, from the photonic exchange, from absolutely everything. And remember, the light photon aspect here can be stimulated by different strains of light. So more of the like the 400-ish, the lower nanometers, the blues, it's going to be more negatively affected the pineal gland. Whereas you kind of go up, you go to like the 610 orange, 630 red, you can kind of go into the near infrared 800s and things like that. You start seeing better improvements, better actions, and better communications through the pineal gland itself. So depending on where you're at from a nanometer aspect will then also change the interaction, positive or negative, with the pineal gland. There have been a lot of people, they really kind of say today's society with so many people having neural atrophy. So prefrontal cortex, right, not making good decisions anymore. It's basically being fried from the overexposure of blue light, and not just the blue light, but the lack of the near infrared. So that lack of near infrared then changes pineal gland stimulation and action, and then you don't have all these processes, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But essentially, the pineal gland governs so much of biology and governs so much of the energetic spirituality side of things. So if we have the pineal gland first, what we also have, because Epitalon, right, is modulating positively the pineal gland. So there's positive stimulation of Epitalon to pineal gland. So that's number one, big thing right there. So the pineal gland stimulation is number one, Number two, and then we'll get to the spiderweb effect here. Number two is really looking at that end replication problem. So this is where Epitalon got a lot of love, right? For actually extending telomeres. What we're looking at here is what's called as the end replication problem. So if we kind of draw it out, we'll do one, two, three, four, five, six. Okay, so now we are looking at actual telomeres, okay? Telomeres, and we are looking at Epitalon as solving the end replication problem. So what we're looking here with DNA is it is actually reading down and writing up, or writing down and reading up rather. So if we're looking at this from the 3' to 5', you're seeing this portion. So this is the parent strand. This is the new strand of DNA. Maybe I should add a little bit more. As we age, this strand is slowly going to get smaller. So this is going to slowly get smaller. Parent strand is going to stay there. But over time, that causes a lot of cellular dysfunction. As that 3' overhang right here, because it's going to, over time, obviously get smaller, right? So 3', that overhang there, we are trying to literally add that length back. So what we could do, if you look at telomerase, right? Cool little baby enzyme, they'll come in and actually add length to this to get us back to that, to solve that end replication problem, right? To stop these end caps from basically being dissolved over time. What happens is Epitalon will drive telomerase activity to go ahead and via TERT mainly, actually add length to that 3' overhang, thereby solving the end replication problem. So if you look at biology, actually, if we see what was the first thing stopping us from getting humans to live beyond 120 years old, it was telomeres. Telomeres were shortened roughly around that age, and then you can't progress from there. So that was kind of the first step in trying to figure out how to drive longevity, right? We solved that, I don't want to say pretty easily because it wasn't like it was me, but it was tons of people out there that was able to solve this, fix that actual end replication problem, and drive that 3' overhang. So we are seeing right out of the gate, Epitalon solving the telomerase 3' overhang and replication problem, number one, thereby taking us to 120 years old. If there's no other big catastrophes, like if you're healthy, then you will not die at 120 because you solve the telomerase aspect side of things. So that's number one. So first of all, automatically telomeres don't have to be worried about in this kind of scenario, assuming everything else is equated, right? So we have that. Then we have the direct stimulation at the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is the thing that dictates almost all of biology from a physiological, biological sense, but then also from a spirituality and an energetic aspect. So right out of the gate, Epitalon should be shooting fireworks off in your head, or you should be going, okay, I should listen to this because this sounds pretty important. Now, we have to do the whole spiderweb drawing because I think that's just very easy to see, really easy to understand, and it'll make a little bit more sense because Epitalon, like everything else, does a lot of things. We always talk about the prime, the secondary, the tertiary, and quaternary aspect of things, right? So if you would actually break down a molecule, we would have a primary, secondary, tertiary, or quaternary aspect. So the first four things that it does best, for me, I see Epitalon as mainly being that telomerase player, number one, and number two being the pineal gland player. What about 3 and 4, and then 5, and then 6 and 7? You keep going on because it does a lot of things. Therefore, you can use the compounded molecule for a lot of different reasons, right? So if we have our good old, I'll do Epitalon in the middle. Switch some colors. Actually, no. We are going to first say, what did we talk about? We said first, there's going to be that TERT cascade in order to extend overall telomeres. So primary, right? Secondary, we are looking at that direct pineal gland stimulation, essentially to drive positively basic biological functions on top of the actual energetics there. But what else? I think a cool one is going to be phospho-Creb, right? So this phospho-Creb is actually involved. It's a critical protein involved in folding memories. Epitalon positively stimulates that. So we're seeing a change in phospho-Creb, which is what? The critical protein that folds these memories. So you see an improvement in the folding of memories. So if you've taken Epitalon for any prolonged period of time, you'll realize your short-term and long-term memory improves dramatically. I believe I've been taking Epitalon now for 6 months, 7 months-ish, right around that time frame. And that was one thing I noticed immediately after the first 30-some days. So the phospho-Creb changes, that's cool. We have folding of memories. We have the changes to telomerase, the changes to the pineal gland. What else is pretty cool about it? One of the really cool things is in the immune system, it can actually, and this is important, modulate T cell function. So why is that word modulate so important? That word modulate is so important because we can see over or under expression of the immune system, both causing problems. Oh, wrong side. If you overexpress the immune system, you have what? Autoimmunity. If you underexpress the immune system and mismanage these T cells and their functionality, what happens? You get sick because you don't have enough immunity to play with. So it actually modulates T cell function and over time can bring down a lot of autoimmune based problems while also strengthening overall immunity. So similar to thymogen alpha 1, where we have one component that handles the actual driver and the other that handles the expression. This does that same thing. It can either give you more or less of an immune response from a T cell functionality aspect based on what your body needs at that time, which is really cool. We also see a change in actual muscular, so myological-based stem cell release. So we see an actual change, an improvement in muscular stem cell donation, which drives what? A good amount of lean tissue hypertrophy, aka anabolism. Now, take this with a grain of salt. This is not going to be a TRT or more. It's not going to be a growth hormone peptide. It's not going to give you a ton of anabolism. But what it can do for the elderly is slowly give them those micrograms and grams of lean tissue over time to make sure that if they fall, they don't break a hip. So for anyone who's younger, this is not going to be a big player in the biological world, but it's still going to help you. For anyone who's older, it's definitely going to help you. You should still have your other basic hormones and everything in place, but that's going to start pushing things in the right direction, okay? So we have the changes, telomerase. We have the changes, pineal gland energetics and biology, changes to the folding of memories, changes in modulation to T cell functionality, changes and positive improvements in donation of actual stem cells. Now we also have, sorry guys, I'm getting thirsty, some really cool changes globally, right? One of the cool things it does throughout the entire body positively manages oxidation. So we see an overall global reduction in reactive oxygen species, and that basically pulls down global inflammation. So we have a lot here, from multiple aspects of the brain to longevity, to looking at muscular growth, to looking at just pulling down inflammation. It's doing a lot of different things. Now, this is all pretty well teased out, talked about in the research. What else have I seen it personally do over the years? What does Epitalon have the potential to do? Well, because it's working from a telomerase-based aspect while improving all biological functioning, we see, and this is going to be more of the application, theoretical, whatever you want to call it. I'll change that to blue. So black is going to be the baseline players, we know. The red is going to be the other things proven in the research that we know. The blue here is going to be things that we've seen in practical application with maybe some skewed research, but when it happens 98 times out of 100 people, something's there. We have to research this more. So if we're looking at this side of things, we've seen direct clearance of senescent cells. So the downregulation in senescent cells has to come more from an autophagy-based cascade, which makes sense. Because if we look what Epitalon has the potential to do, we are seeing, if we kind of put this over here, the changes to AMPK, positive modulation, by the way. We see those changes from peroxisome, proliferate activated receptor, gamma coactivator 1 alpha, so PGC1 alpha. That means we see changes to things like our SIRT1s, some of the other SIRTs as well. That means we're also going to see changes on almost every single system that's involved with cellular healing, which means endogenous production of, and here's another one, because it has to come through this cascade. Actually, I'll put this up here. Endogenous improved production of endogenous clothoproteins, right? Now, because it's doing all this healing in so many different areas, what body parts have I seen it improve? More from a cellular health and longevity aspect side of things. Well, we have seen some really cool improvements in eyesight. Now, I have tried just about everything in eye drop format. We got really good success with BPC-157, TB500, SS31, the chelated carnosine, so the can't see eye drops. We've done tons of different eye drops. Have tried an Epitalon-based eye drop, didn't see it work at all actually, but yet the injectable and oral counterpart seemed to reduce the glycation in ocular tissue because we got more clarity. So what happens is in your eyes, and that vitreal humerus, that jelly-like substance that floats around, and in the back of your eye, so if we do like, I can't really draw an eye, but here we go. So here's the back of your eye. This is all the actual vasculature. This is the vitreal humerus. What happens is how much and how good you are at partitioning nutrients will change supply into that vasculature, and then will modulate the molecules in the vitreal humerus. So we'll see all these little molecules in here, and that'll change how light comes in and stimulates those. Because remember, we have different receptors. I'll just put R for receptors above and below our eye. That's why in the evening, light should be coming from a lower space, then throughout the day should be higher, right? So from a Epitalon-based aspect, we're looking at seeing positive changes to the vascularization and then the modulation of intraocular substrate, which has to, again, come from the reduction in ROS and then the change in AMPK, PGC1 alpha, things like that, because we see the same phenomenon happening with almost anything that's healthy. If you were to take SS31, you see a similar effect. You can make that in eye drops. Epitalon, again, doesn't work too well as eye drops, but you see these similarities, right? So we started seeing changes and improvements to ocular tissue, number one. Number two, we've seen some pretty cool things in the Cardi B world. Paying attention? I just learned who that was this morning, by the way, and it's the end of 2025. So the cardiac world. So cardiac myocytes, right? We are seeing people that have had left ventricular hypertrophies, septum deviations, Purkinje fiber problems, so around the outside, different cardiac myopathies, any kind of cardiac damage you can imagine. If we need proper remodeling, pulling down inflammation, Epitalon seems to have a blanket effect on overall cardiac myocytes. Now again, that could be coming from the sheer fact we're improving telomerase in different organ systems. That could be coming from the ROS production. That could be coming from the spillover and changes to just modulation of T cell functionality so that the immune system is not attacking an organ, because that can happen to certain people. We don't know, but we have seen scans and we have seen improvement to not just cardiac, but arterial changes. So moreover in the vascular health-based world, where people that have those extremity-based problems. And we're not talking more like diabetic nephropathy type things. We're talking more about true vascular inefficiency and insufficiency problems. So the true discoloration, black and blue legs for months and years, excuse me, potentially. We are seeing changes and positive changes once you introduce Epitalon. And over the past decade plus, I've been very cautious to talk about things like this because I try and make sure I do my due diligence. So for certain periods of time, we would only have Epitalon in, pull it out, and then see the change, then bring the entire protocol back in. We've teased out a lot of these things to make sure things are working over the years, but we've seen that time and time again help the eyes, help the heart, and then help the vascular system as a whole. Now, some things that technically, actually I should put one back in red over here. One that we do know before I get back over there to renal and hepatic tissue. One that we do know, I'll put this over here, is that we see a downregulation in MMP9, which is a protein that actually breaks down dermal tissue. So we see changes and improvements to our skin with Epitalon usage. There used to be, and there might still be, some topical Epitalon products. It's really cool things for facial appearance, for wrinkles and things of that nature. But we know that cascade's proven, awesome, that's worked time and time again. Going back to the theoretical over here, the renal and hepatic's interesting, right? So we're looking at the liver and the kidneys. So renal, nephrotic, meaning kidney, and then hepatic, meaning liver. Question mark. In probably 50%, it was close to half. Numbers would change over the years, but roughly half of people will get reductions to your basic, and I should list them out, right? So we know we're on the same page. To your basic aspartate aminotransferase, alanine aminotransferase, alkaline phosphatase, some changes to bilirubin, improvements to EGFRs, downregulations in HS, CRPs. We've seen some really cool things. We've also seen the actual improvement to like white blood cells and things of that nature, balancing out of lymphocytes and neutrophils. We've seen some global effects, right? We already know over here that, where did I put it? The modulation of the immune system. So we already know that. That means it would upstream then fix a lot of these other problems. But the renal hepatic one is interesting. Some people literally took AST, ALTs of 100 down to like 40s, right? Just with Epitalon usage. Other people only saw like a 10% change. Other people saw no change at all. So it was about 50% of people got better functioning kidneys and better functioning livers just by bringing in Epitalon. So again, that is in the question mark category because it doesn't happen every single time, and there was no rhyme or reason to why. It wasn't like only the dysfunctional individuals saw this change or only the healthy individuals saw this change. There was no pattern to that. So that's another question mark. But overall, this is not going to be a thing you're going to take and all of a sudden see changes to your body composition directly. Meaning as you get healthy and partition nutrients better, you will over time build more muscle tissue, lose more body fat, and add more years to your life. What you also see is direct changes to circadian architecture, like we said, through the pineal gland stimulation, which is a proven fact, which we talk about. And that one of those biological functions is going to be an improvement in overall what we call as sleep architecture. So really, it's the transitions in between sleep periods and phases, which is massively beneficial. So the architecture of your ability to fall asleep, stay asleep, and then wake up with a good amount of energy, have a traditional basic cortisol spike at the right time, not at 1 a.m., or unless you're like me getting up then. But we see change in that, and that is proven, so that does stay over there. So you will see changes the body composition over time because of the improvements to your sleep. That lymphatic system will kick up more, you'll clear out more inflammatory plaques and proteins and things of that nature. But to me, this is really one of the most underlying, like this should be one of the things on our multivitamins, right? Because it drives so many aspects of longevity, of healing that then will also spill over into the body composition-based world. And I have to mention that because I feel like sometimes, even if people are striving to have a certain longevity goal and to live forever and to be superhuman every single day, I feel like sometimes we either get too caught up in that or we get too caught up in the body composition effects. We want to look good and feel good. And so we might do things that are maybe against our longevity goals. And so I bring that up with Epitalon because it kind of does both of them, more of the longevity player, but over time will add up on the body composition aspect pretty dramatically. Now we have to talk about dosage, utilization, frequency, methods of delivery, things like that. Because I think what were the old traditional doses? They were like 10 milligrams a day for 10 days or 5 days or 20 days. They were really high dosed. And I believe the problem with that was the original research was not translated properly, right? And it's interesting. I had a conversation, I believe it was with Ben Pekulski, that he interviewed or talked with one of the researchers in Kavistan's lab, and they confirmed that it was originally done in micrograms. Whoever actually translated it did it in milligrams. So I believe, I could be wrong on that story, but I believe that's the conversation we had. Either way, regardless, I always found over the years that the micrograms or the milligrams infrequently worked better. But I came to this from a different aspect. So I was coming up from the oncology world. So I noticed that if we had Epitalon in someone with a tumor, tumors grew faster. How? Tumors, they have telomeres, right? You can elongate the telomeres of these tumors and give the tumors more life and more fortification. So a big thing to look out for is if you have a tumor, that tumor can actually be fueled with Epitalon because it is driving up telomerase activity within the tumor, and therefore it is causing it to more easily live, proliferate, metastasize, and things like that. So right out of the gate, I didn't like the fact that we saw, because certain individuals, like we would go from a stage 1 to stage 2 or stage 3 and everything else was in place perfectly, we would drop Epitalon and they'd be gone. Now, with that being said, if you do not have a tumor, this cannot cause a tumor to grow. So it's not, it can't be a carcinogen at all because it doesn't cause tumors to grow. So we have to make sure that that's well understood, right? Epitalon does not grow tumors if they are not there, right? If a tumor is there, it will grow. If it's not there, it cannot grow. So the problem is a lot of people aren't going to, check cancer now, check cancer labs, and you can check for circulating tumor cells, CTCs, and see if you have a tumor. Most people aren't doing that. So if you're in this whole longevity world, take the test, awesome test. It'll tell you yes or no if there is a tumor because it's giving off circulating tumor cells, so very global. But if you have a tumor, this is not a compound you want. If you do not have a tumor, this is a compound you would like to take. So I realized right out of the gate, that's not too cool, number one. And then I also realized the dose, which we said before, the dose, these 3 big problems, was the original dose essentially was wrong. And it was just mistranslated or misunderstood or someone screwed up and then all of a sudden everyone's dosing things super high. Now those people have been dosing Epitalon super high for all these years. If you didn't have a tumor, probably didn't cause any problems, but it also probably didn't give you any more bang for your buck than if you dosed it lower. So it's not that dosing these kinds of compounds are bad at higher doses. A lot of these compounds are extremely safe, but in this scenario, because we're dealing with telomerase, you do have to be careful. So if you believe you're a healthy individual, Epitalon's more going to be beneficial. Check for CTCs. You're good to go if you know for sure. But if we go back to, now that we understand that, right? We understand where I came. I came up from an oncology perspective. I was looking at the growth of tumors if they're present, and then the original dosage being wrong. So we understand that. Let's go into the differences in application, right? So to me, we can be doing this really 2 formats. We'll go oral. We're going to go with injectable. These are going to be the 2 main ones we're going to talk about. There are some sublingual versions that work pretty decently. There are some transdermal applications that work pretty decently. And there are some topical, just cosmetic for the dermal MMP9 changes to stop to downregulate that breakdown of collagen and elastin and dermal layers, right? We're staying away from those. We're focusing mainly on the longevity benefits, the body composition, all the things we talked about already, right? The main players are going to be your oral preparation, traditional tablets, and then an injectable preparation in a normal lyophilized powder. Now, because we're going from oral to injectable, what changes? The chemical strength goes up once you inject a compound. So the injectable preparation is going to have the highest amount of overall chemical pressure. But that means the oral one, right, has to obviously have the lower amount of chemical expression. Chemical expression, pressure, same word, right? But because of that, that means the injectable should be dosed what? Generally, less frequent because it's so chemically strong. Whereas you're taking the oral that has a lower chemical expressive capacity, it can be dosed with an actual higher frequency more often. So generally, you can dose this a couple ways. From the oral preparation, I'm a big fan if you're doing it longer term, sub 5 milligrams pretty much daily. That's what I've been doing for, again, 6-7 months now. We're looking at roughly, you might even be able to go higher, but I'm a really big fan of that 5 milligram dose essentially daily. Now again, whenever we inject it, higher chemical pressure. So if there is a tumor, it will feed that faster from a telomerase 3' overhang aspect negatively. But if we don't have that tumor, we're good to go. But even then, if we look at the ultimate ability to express these telomeres, to alter the pineal gland, there's only so much stimulation you can get. After that, you're kind of wasting the molecule. So generally, again, a couple of ways you can do this, but I like something along the lines of a couple different ways. We'll go protocol 1. About 1 milligram a day for roughly 10 days. And you do this essentially 2 to 4 times per year. Now, pretty decent range in there, but you're doing this like once a quarter or something less than that. If you are a bigger responder, because certain people respond better to bolus doses of these compounds, you could also go ahead, take that rough same dose, do it all at one time, and do a 10 milligram bolus one time for basically per quarter, right? So you do 10 milligrams on the first of every quarter, which works out to be roughly 4 times per year. Now, these are the protocols for the basic healthy individuals, right? So we are going to say, I'll put all these. We're going to say for people that are healthy. Now, in red, we're going to be going to the people that are dysfunctional, sick, elderly, or someone who has a real need to just restore a bunch of telomerase, restore a bunch of pineal gland-based damage, someone who's just a cellular dysfunctional mess. I've actually done this similar protocol I'm about to talk about here in a lot of high-tier athletes that have just abused different chemicals over the years. A lot of bodybuilders, powerlifters, strongmen who really abuse androgens pretty high. You can really push up the actual Epitalon dosage as long as you make sure there's no tumors first. That's super important to understand. There's usually a lot of somatropic compounds used over there. So this protocol for someone who's very dysfunctional, we would actually do protocol, put it over here. So this would be 10 milligrams oral daily. Plus, we would also have the injectable. This would come in at the original doses, 10 milligrams essentially per day for 10 days. And you would do that for the first year, 1 time per quarter. And you would also have to layer on top of that the same dose of FOXO4 DRI as well as FOXO3D. Now, again, this can change as the year goes on, but this is someone who is going to have the most amount of cellular dysfunction and the highest amount of health-based problems. This could be the drug-abusing athlete of the bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman variety. This could just be an elderly individual who never took care of their health. This could be, honestly, not anyone's fault at all. And it's just someone who's extremely sick. And their telomeres, because if we understand telomere basic biology and progression, it starts in the womb. So mothers that have very traumatic, stressful, I can remember one individual in particular who it was an abusive relationship. The pregnancy was unplanned. There was drugs involved. Baby was born with like 50% less functionality of telomeres. So they were 50% shorter than they should have been. And so that's a conversation that gets into a whole different topic, but a lot of childhood births and traumas can cause all these epigenetic changes. So in that kind of scenario, not that you could do this with a child, but bringing in some kind of an oral preparation of Epitalon as that child grows up can be a massive benefit to them. But even the mother themselves could go through something like this to improve the telomere damage that they just accrued over the abusive, drug addictive relationship that occurred, right? And it's sad, but the positive spin on it is that we have all these tools now available to us to help anyone, whether it was drug abuse of any variety, whether it was physical abuse or emotional abuse or stress or whatever it is that caused your telomeres and your pineal gland to calcify and atrophy. So Technically, the pineal gland is like the thymic gland. We're not really calcifying it. We're not really atrophying it, but also we are, meaning in biology, you can either atrophy, make something smaller, or hypertrophy, make it bigger. That's just basic physiology. That's how things can change, right? We can adapt to every environment. That's the reprogramming effect that they did in elephants all those years ago in their hearts to see if they could make them stronger or weaker after an induced heart attack with drugs. So it's cool we have all these therapies out there. To me, Epitalon is something that could probably be in every single person's protocol out there. You would just differentiate between which you would like to be. Would you rather prefer the oral route, daily, lower dosed, or would you rather prefer the doses of once a quarter, or go a little bit less frequently, or are you someone who's more dysfunctional and you have to do a protocol like this? Now, there's a lot of different ways to do these protocols. These are some very basic ones, but I hope this gives you some runway to go with to figure out, okay, are you healthy or dysfunctional? At least you know which route to go down. But as with everything else, there's 1,000 different protocols. Take this with a grain of salt, adapt it to your own world, see what you need, and then apply it to yourself, your loved ones, pretty much everyone. By the way, canines and felines respond amazingly well to Epitalon. Just saying. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out theprepcoach.com, and I'll see you guys in the next seminar.